Hello, my name is Hannah. Welcome to my mid-year freakout tag. But this is a tag all about the books that I have read this year, some superlatives, the worst, the best, the most disappointing, the biggest surprise, so on and so forth. We're going to be going over all of my answers to those prompts now. Before we get into the prompts, the questions for this tag, I just wanted to go over a couple of stats just because I think it's fun. I like using the story graph because they have these fun graphs, as alluded to in the name, that show how much you're reading in different genres, what kinds of books, yada yada. So this year so far, in the first half of 2024, I have read or listened to 30 books. 20 of those I read physically, and the other 10 were audiobooks that I listened to. My most popular genre this year has been fantasy. Now let's get into the questions for this mid-year freakout tag. What is the best book that I've read so far this year? I've read some good ones. There are a lot of standouts, but of those, the best and my favorite has to be The Monk and the Robot duology by Becky Chambers. These two books I read right exactly when I needed them. You know, the characters, the story, the themes that are covered in these books. I needed all of that when I happened to read them, and so they left a really big impression on me because of the timing of when I read them. But essentially, in this book, you have a monk and a robot who meet. They become friends and they help each other to see the beauty in the world, the beauty in humanity, just appreciate everyday life. In the beginning of this book, the monk character is feeling lost, feeling unmotivated, and doesn't know what they should be doing with their life. But then by the end, they have this friend, they've made this friend in this robot, and the two characters complement each other so well and taught each other so much by the end of these two books. And I just really related to that journey that the monk takes across these two books. What is the best sequel I've read so far this year? Obviously, the second book in the Monk and the Robot duology is really high up on this list, but since I just talked about that, I'm gonna talk about a different sequel that I read recently, which is The Grim Conclusion, which is the third book in the Tale of Dark and Grim trilogy. Last year, I read the first two books in this trilogy. This is a children's middle grade book that retells fairy tales, but with a dark twist, right? I loved the first book. The second book was a letdown for me. I didn't enjoy it, so I was hesitant in picking up the third book, but the third book brought everything together. It wrapped up and explained the connections between all three books. It explored themes of trauma and darker themes like that are real, not just these dark fairy tale elements of Cinderella's stepsisters chopping off their toes. Yes, there's dark and twisted elements like that, but they're also more real things that you and I can relate to, and so I really liked that. What is a new release that you would like to read? For me, this is Dragon Fruit by Makia Lucier. This is a book that is kind of based around Pacific Islander mythology. I have Polynesian heritage, and so I was really excited to see that such a big part of this book focuses around Pacific Islander mythology. And so I'm excited about that, and I'm looking forward to reading it soon. What is your most anticipated book that has yet to be released this year? And that book is A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping. This isn't a sequel, but it is within the same world as the book called The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches, which I read last year for my Halloween readathon, and I loved that book. That book I was not expecting to stay with me as much as it did. I was not expecting to connect with that book as much as I did, and so I'm really looking forward to reading another book within that same world, within that same universe. What is my biggest disappointment of the year? The Heart of the Sun Warrior. This is the sequel to The Daughter of the Moon Goddess. It's a fairy tale feeling fantasy centered around Chinese mythology. I read the first book last year, really enjoyed it. It was 3.54 stars for me, and so I picked up the sequel this year, and I was having a good time. It was fine. It was a solid 3-star book. I liked it. I didn't love it, but I liked it until the end. The end completely ruined it for me. Didn't like the ending. So that that, specifically the ending, would be the biggest disappointment of 2024 so far. What is the biggest surprise for you of 2024? I would say this is kind of tied. One is The Grim Conclusion. Like I said, the second book in that trilogy I really didn't like, so I was hesitant to pick up the third, but ended up really enjoying it. The second book that was also a surprise to me is I Who Have Never Known Men. I wanted to pick up this book because I've heard so many people talk about it, but I was also very hesitant. I didn't think I would like it because it is kind of a post-apocalyptic story about like survival, and just like the premise of it sounded very sad and depressing. It's like one of those books that like there's the story, but that's not why you read it. You read it for like to get you thinking and to understand all this philosophical stuff, right? It's one of those books. And so I was worried that I would like miss all the philosophical stuff and then I wouldn't enjoy the story, because it's not really written for the story to be enjoyed. It's a sad story. It really is. But it ended up being, it did make me think. It is very philosophical. It is very depressing. I recently finished it and haven't been able to stop thinking about it since then. Like it really gets you thinking just about human nature, about determination and the importance of connection, and like there's so much to it, and like every time I think about it something new comes up and I'm like, oh yeah, oh my gosh, that like, oh, you know. And so I would say that I didn't think I'd get all of that, but I did, and it makes me feel smart and I like it, and it's got me thinking about a lot. So that was my biggest surprise. Who is a new favorite author for you? So, according to my Storygraph account, the authors I've read most this year are Becky Chambers and Brandon Sanderson. I finished the Mistborn trilogy, the first Mistborn trilogy, earlier this year. And then obviously I read the Monk and the Robot duology. So those two are tied as far as how many books I've read of theirs. I think Becky Chambers is definitely a new favorite author. I'm really curious to read her other books, her other works. I know that they steer more into the like sci-fi realm, which is a genre I haven't read too much of, and so I'm kind of curious to start dipping my toes in that genre by reading more of Becky Chambers' works. But I would also have to say an author that isn't listed in this Storygraph graph is Erin Morgenstern. I am currently listening to the Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I really like how it's written. I really like how everything is described. Everything just feels so magical. There's something so real and tangible, yet like fantastical about it at the same time. And I love it. So I'm definitely going to be reading more of her books this year. Speaking of which, another question in this tag is, what is a book you want to read before the end of 2024? I made a list of 5 books that I have to read by the end of the year at the beginning of this year, and I've only read one of those books so far. So I have a ways to go with that list, but one of those books is The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. I'm definitely going to be picking that up very soon because I've just enjoyed The Night Circus so much that I want to read more from her. All right. Do I have a new fictional crush? No, I don't find myself crushing on book characters the same way I did when I was a teenager. So no, I don't have any crushes. There is a character that I want to be friends with, and that is Moscap the Robot from the Monk and the Robot duology. And they are also my newest favorite character, just because they are so appreciative of the world around them, and I want to be more like that. What is the book that made me cry? Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow made me cry. There's a part, if you know, if that made me cry, because you just get to know the characters so well, so deeply. Spoilers, that when one of them dies, it just, oh my gosh, broke my heart. Tears were shed over that. What is a book that made me happy? Bridgerton? Romancing Mr. Bridgerton. I read this in preparation for Bridgerton season 3 to come out, and I was not expecting to have as much fun with this book as I did. You can watch the vlog if you want to see my reactions to things, to see just how much this book had me like giggling and just like, oh my gosh. It was so cheesy, and there were lots of parts that were very over the top when it came to like romance tropes and things, just like romance. It was a very over the top romance, but I think that just made it all the more fun for me because it just like was so much. Yeah, that's a book that made me happy. What is the most beautiful book that I have bought this year? I'm glad you asked. So a couple weeks ago, my library had like a big book sale of like old books that they were getting rid of, and I found this book. I'm so excited about it. It's a collection of Hans Christian Andersen fairy tales, but it's got this stunning, it's like this like classic looking edition, leather bound. It has this gold foil on the cover. It's just stunning. It's beautiful. And how much was it? Like $1.50. I am like so proud of this find. Now it is time for me to shout out other booktubers that I really enjoy watching. And I have 2 booktubers I really want to shout out. One is Katie Marie Reads. I watch her every single one of her videos. I just love how like calm vibes, the calm yet happy yet like cozy. I don't know. Maybe it's because she reads a lot of cozy fantasy. I don't know what it is, but I really like her vibe. I really like her vlogs. And then the second booktuber I want to mention is Libraries and Lattes is the channel name. Her name is Chelsea. I feel like we've kind of become friends here on BookTube. We have very similar tastes when it comes to reading. It has been so much fun seeing what she's reading because, as I said, we have similar tastes. And so those are my 2 booktuber shout outs for the end of this mid-year freakout tag. And now I would love to know, what is a book that has made you happy this year? Comment down below. And with all that said, thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you for listening to me ramble about books. I will see you in my next video. Bye.